Okay, so if you're new to the channel, hi, I'm Caffeine and Chaos. This is, I guess we're going to start doing this on Sundays now?
Yep, it sounds like it.
Alright, so we're going to start calling this Supernatural Sundays instead of Supernatural Saturdays, where we talk to you during the Magical Coffee Hour. My name is the Linda, or Caffeine and Chaos. This handsome devil over to my left is Drake, the Working Dragon Mystic. What's up, Drake?
Not much.
Not much?
Nope, forgot to click my screen on.
Might be a good idea. So, if you guys haven't joined us here before, we take a day every week to talk to you, have a little bit of a podcast about supernatural things, typically things that are represented in the media, the mass media, social media, movies, books, comics, everything in between that you can genuinely think of or generally think of that, is typically portrayed. I bring the questions, Drake brings the answers, and today's topic, we're going to be talking about angels and demons. And no, I'm not talking about your current girlfriend and your ex-girlfriend. I am talking about the entities that are used during magical practices. Some people know them because of the Christian religion, where you have God's angels and the fallen angels, also known as demons, or some of them are demons, and there's demons that are other kinds of entities as well. So let's get started. We got a lot to talk about and an hour to cover it all. How are you doing today, Drake?
I'm doing good, but you're right, that is a massive topic.
So let's just go ahead and start it off. We're going to go with what an angel and a demon are. So, as I mentioned earlier, if you were a Christian, you were brought up in a Christian household, or you are just, you know a lot more about theology than the average bear, you are aware that the Christian God has his angels, and those angels are typically portrayed as humans with white wings. They fly around, they do cool stuff, they help, wayward humans like myself to get through conflicts. Maybe you grew up in the 90s and early 2000s and you watched Touched by an Angel. Maybe you're a fan of Good Omens right now, because that show is like kicking it up, like really hardcore right now. Or maybe you just know what angels are just from anything else, or maybe you've heard some songs that mention angels. What we know about demons. Some people just say that they're just fallen angels, which means that they decided, fuck you, God, I don't want to do what you said. So God said, well, my house, my rules, get the hell out. And by get the hell out, I mean down to hell you go. And guess what? Now they're hanging out down with Satan in hell, partying it up. Instead of white wings, they probably got some bat wings going on, little pointy tails. They're usually portrayed as, some little kind of imp looking thing that carries around a little pitchfork and pokes you in the butt. If you ever watched Hercules, Pain and Panic, they were considered like little demons. Or you could even think about like Satan himself. He himself was a fallen angel, back to that whole demons are fallen angel thing. And whenever you think of him in his angel form, he's a human, typically portrayed with black wings. Or if you just, you really like Halloween, there's little white robes, white wings, or you got little red wings with a little devil tail and some horns. I think I've covered everything that most people think of when they think of angels and demons. Now, Drake, where do I go wrong in all of that?
Well, honestly, you did cover probably a good chunk of the pop culture, and in that one section, I'd say we've probably managed to offend all the occultists and the Christians at the same time.
I mean, isn't that what I'm here for, is to offend people?
Yeah. Well, first off, the word demon actually comes from an older word, which is daemon, and its actual root means it's like higher knowledge or spiritual knowledge.
Okay.
And have you ever heard of an entity called a jinn?
Jinn, aren't they like genies?
Yeah, that's actually where the genie myth comes from, mythos.
Look, I remember things.
So a lot of your daemons and jinn kind of fall into this category. They're extremely powerful entities that are they have massive amounts of knowledge to teach. So that's actually where it comes from. And now, mind you, when we're talking about these today, because cultural lines and timelines don't match, because biblically the world's far younger than archaeologically. So I apologize if it don't fit the timeline you use. But let's start with the area most people know, and that's actually the fallen angel concept. Now, whether you view angels as created by God or entities of their own right, the fallen angel concept mostly works the same. And that you have a singular group of entities that at some point, for some reason, had a varying opinion. And they split apart. Now, of course, when we're talking fallen, you usually get the God threw him out of heaven, and there's the whole war with the angels and all that. But there's actually a group of fallen angels that it's debated whether they were thrown out of heaven or they just left. And that's the group of angels known as the Watcher Angels. Because they were sent to watch over mankind, or they were supposed to watch over mankind.
Is this a similar concept as a guardian angel?
They were supposed to watch over all of mankind as a whole and the progress that they were making. But they changed their operating rules a little because they weren't supposed to technically interfere. Instead, they came down and married humans. So, in some books they were punished, in others they were just forsaken from heaven. The lore in that one tale goes all over the place. Now, when you look at your demons, the biggest thing most people notice about demons straight off is most of your more popular demons, their names are the names of gods that would predate the Bible. So a lot of people think these entities were demonized by the church. And for the most part, everyone that I've worked with, they've been very approachable, pretty easygoing. Now, that's not to discredit the Christian mythos, because I have worked with entities that show up within the Christian mythos, like Lilith.
Talking about my cat now?
No, not your cat, Lilith.
Lilith, have you been doing magic with Drake and not telling me about it? It's supposed to be my familiar, you jerk.
Yeah, we summoned up some rum. It was good.
I mean, she is a ramen queen. She steals mine all the time. She's also a hoe.
Now,
right, Lily? You a hoe? She's looking for more treats. I gave her some treats.
But depending on the mythos and the lore you go to, the entities change drastically. However, you do run into a few commonalities across the mythos. Angels are always, or I'll say most often, because there's probably going to be one outlier that somebody's going to come screaming at me with. Most often they are very ordered, organized, and by the book. So they're very rules lawyers. They don't bend the rules. They don't flex the rules. They stick to them. And for people like me, this can be annoying. Because with me, when I'm working on something, I'm looking for the quickest, most efficient way to get my project done. And I do have my own code of honor and ethics. It's not like I'm just willing to run everybody over with a school bus to get someplace. But their rules, I'm willing to bend a lot more than they are. So it's difficult when I work with angels because unless we are on the exact same page with every single plot point that we're trying to do, it turns into the world's worst negotiation.
Oops.
On the flip side of that, the entities most people would refer to as demons, most people refer to them as more chaotic because they're not as bolted down to those rules. The closest thing to rules that these entities have is their personality and what it is they enjoy to do.
Hey, Travesty. Welcome.
So it's more like working with an individual in that case. If that makes sense. Because every one of these entities is going to have their own personality and preferences, just like a human. Which angels have their own personalities and preferences. I'm not saying they don't have personality. They definitely do. But these entities seem to be very much willing to teach and help you almost to the point of any means necessary. And in some cases, that's where it gets bumpy. Because let's say you have a specific issue you're dealing with, whether it's a fear, a trauma, or something that you personally, for the comfort of your own and own enjoyment of life, you choose to ignore dealing with that issue. Okay?
Well, that sounds like me.
But at the same time, you were to approach a demon to help you with this issue. Well, if you were to approach an angel and a demon, you're going to reach your goal just a little differently. Because the angels, if it's a pretty straightforward thing, an angel can work very quickly. Very, very quickly. If it's not as straightforward, they're going to try and help you through the gauntlet piece by piece, little by little, and they're going to help you with every issue along the way. And it's generally considered a more pleasant journey, though it's going to take longer. Whereas the demon, it sees where you're at, it sees where you want to be, and it finds the shortest distance, even if it has to drag you through glass to get you there. Because
that's fair.
It sees the lessons you need to learn, and it's like, well, this human has asked me to teach them, so I'm going to teach them. And this is usually where people mess up, because they will ask for something and they won't think it through what they're asking for, and in their eyes everything just goes to hell and it starts getting chaotic. Things are falling apart. But if they work through that chaos on the other end, they end up with a result better than they could have imagined. Because of the old analogy, to create something new you have to destroy the old.
Okay.
So
that was a lot.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
I told you picked the big one.
I was happy about it though. Okay, so first, before I go into my next series of questions for you, number one, I want to welcome Travesty to the stream. He is a longtime member of the Caffeine and Chaos channel. Just wanted to say he has said that he's finding this to be a very interesting podcast. So thank you, Travesty. That means a lot to us. We are very happy to hear that. And he says we had him at Gin. So while you have my attention, do you have any questions for us before we continue on to our next round of questions? Well, next round that I have for him. I'm gonna have to produce some some music for the podcast just so I can stop singing when we're doing these things, because I tend to just start rambling. And noticing my haircut is looking a little flat today. I need to add some mousse or something. Okay. So that's actually a lot of really good information in regards to what angels and demons are. So I can tell you, what was it, about 2014 time frame. I want to say it was about 2014 time frame. I went to this this party. Oh, hold on. He said he wants to learn a little bit more about jinns. He wants to know, aren't they benevolent creatures that are both good and evil?
He is correct. And again, that's the reason jinn are usually lumped in with demons, because their personalities are pretty much the same. Because we view good and evil as you're either good or you're evil. And demons and angels are split up exactly like that. Angels are good, demons are evil. It's black and white, no one questions it. But the reality is their personalities are just like ours. They're not as petty as we are. But they're also...
Don't call me out like that.
They're not concerned with our comfort. So when people say jinn are evil, they usually say they try to trick you and all this. They're not really interested in tricking you. I actually did an entire path working with jinn magic one time. And I was a little cautious because I had heard that. They will try to trick you. And even occultists separate demons and jinn for some reason. But they are willing to help you. But they definitely have I'm going to help you. You're going to do the work, and we're going to get you there. And the responsibility will always fall back on you.
So similar to like the genie concept, be careful what you wish for.
You might just get it. Yeah. So because that responsibility falls back on the person and they're held accountable, people do like to jump in and label them as, well, they tricked me. No, it gave you what you asked for. You didn't think it through. Which, they're not the only entities that do this. Working with dragons. When I work, there's a practitioner I know of. They wanted a new car. Now, when they did their ritual, they contacted the dragon they wanted to work with. Their exact phrasing, because they showed me the ritual when it all went down. And I started laughing when I read it. I need a new car, so I must get out of this car. Help me to get out of this car so I can get a new car. Now, you notice what the first part of the request is?
Get me out of this car?
Yep. Next day, the engine in their car blows up and drops out of it and catches fire.
Okay.
They're out of the car. There is no car.
Well, I mean, that would get me out of a vehicle.
Yeah, so what they were asking for was, they asked for it in a way that the dragon was trying to bring it all about, which it did. It took 2 or 3 weeks and the person had a new car, but there was a 3-week span due to the dragon basically doing exactly what they asked for, where they didn't have a vehicle.
And I mean, to be fair, when it comes to magic, from what I understand, you need to be concise because the magical entities are more practical and more direct. So our humanoid sarcasms, if you will, and turn of phrases don't necessarily measure. So Travis also says, I read some cultures would ask jinns for guidance, protections, or even ask them to ask as a warning to bad spirits, while other cultures would be against the use and beliefs of the jinn.
And yeah, again, you got that cultural viewpoint, and I think some of that also comes from some of the culture's religions. But yeah, depending on how you view it, because, for example, a Christian probably wouldn't call on a jinn. They would probably consider that uncouth for their belief system.
Idols. When that'd be considered an idol. A false idol.
Well, an idol's an object, not an entity.
Well, I know with Christianity, pretty much anything that you call upon for power is considered an idol.
Yeah, so, and there are practices when working with entities that doesn't, idols come into that, but that would be a whole new show. So, yeah, there are different cultures that view the entities different, and it's hard to say why, because you really have to look at that culture specifically. Do they have a viewpoint of magic that magic in general is bad, or is it more about you should be doing things yourself, or should you be turning to specific deities, those kinds of things. Even in magic, there's people, you'll run into this because Eris Goetia is the easiest place to see this, because these are 72 spirits, or demons, depending on who you're talking to, that have been worked with for centuries. Now you have people who work in evocation magic, and they will work with these entities, and they get results. And they never have any issues out of it, but they don't follow the exact process that's laid out in the Lesser Key of Solomon. And then you will have Solomonic practitioners, or people who follow the Goetia to the letter, that unless you're doing the ritual to the letter, you don't know what you're talking about, even if you're getting results. So that viewpoint, it's all over the place. And then there's some magical practitioners, they won't touch the Goetia. Mathers himself, which was someone who worked alongside Crowley, there's a conversation between the two of them where they were talking about the Goetia, and Mathers said, if you have to ask me if you're ready, you're not ready.
I like that. And then a follow-up from Travesty, which I'm loving this Q&A, by the way. That's one thing about Christian religion. Anything that isn't God or Jesus is an idol. It's kind of sad that they destroy a lot of potential ancient information and secrets from the past, but that topic is a bit controversial.
It is.
Thankfully, here we don't believe in the controversial. We take the controversy, we hug it, we kiss it, we pour it a drink, and we ask it to stay the night, because that's what we do around here.
Exactly.
We like to bust down those doors.
I mean, by definition, an idol is an object or representation of an entity. Okay? Whether it holds power or not, it is a focus item for when you communicate with that entity. So, if you have a saint card in your house, if you have a statue of Saint Michael or Michael the Archangel, and when you say your prayer to the Archangel Michael, that statue is part of it. Technically, by definition, that's idolatry. You're worshiping an idol in that literal sense. But that's okay, because it's one of essentially God's. But the Bible says no idols, so it just depends on which way they cut the mustard that day, whether it's okay or not.
Thanks. And then just to finish off with that whole, we will not intentionally offend anyone's personal religion or beliefs. This is 100%. This is what we've studied. This is what we understand. If you have an opposing viewpoint, you are more than welcome to discuss that with us. This is an open environment for discussion and learning. This is not to fight. This is not to say, Christians suck, Jews suck, Islamic sucks. No, we're not doing that.
No.
This is not to say that Wiccans suck, pagans suck, or even atheists suck. Atheists suck. This is even not to say that the Nordics suck. We're not telling anybody that they suck or that they are wrong. In fact, to be 100% open door policy, I grew up a very hardcore Christian. Like I was like one step off from going to a Christian school. The only reason that I didn't go to it is because I grew up poor, and there was no way that I was getting into a Christian school. I went to church 6 days a week.
Yeah,
That is the level of Christianity that I grew up in. But now I'm very spiritual and very open-minded to all the experiences because I had to step away from the church due to it did not resonate with my own personal beliefs as I got older.
Yeah, I mean,
but I was
I was actually raised Baptist. I ended up in Assemblies of God. I taught Royal Rangers for a while. I taught children's church. So I actually know my biblical lore pretty well. Definitely not as well as a full-blown theologian or pastor would, but
we have very similar backgrounds.
Yeah, it's just there's that scientific part of my brain that has to know why, and the church, anytime I asked why, they usually didn't have an answer.
Yep. So I'm going to go back to our questions now, and Travesty says he likes it, he's open-minded, and he's free for us to go all out. So, back to where I was going with the 2014 comment. I went to this party. It was a spiritualist retreat kind of thing going on, learning a little bit more about meditation, open-mindedness, connectivity to the earth. And one of the things I was there, we had some tarot readers, we had some aura readers, and we had somebody who also did an angel reading. You and I have had an off-camera conversation and how we both see those kinds of things. So we're not going to get into that portion of it. However, that brings me to how angels and demons are utilized. Angel magic, demon magic. I am aware of the book of demonology. I've looked into it a little bit just because I wanted, on my own leisure, wanted to learn more about demons and, hell and angels and how they all correlate, what it all means as a human who wants to know more. Because, I am a woman. I want to know more. And that was the problem with women in the Garden of Eden and in heaven. We want to know way too much. And, I'd probably get kicked out of heaven right now because I admit I want to know way too much. So I want to know more about angel magic, demon magic. What does that mean? Is angel magic more neutral? Is demon magic more neutral? Are they on the same playing field? Is one considered dark magic, light magic? What does it all mean? Tell me. I want to know.
Okay. Well, let's get this out of the way first because it's going to be the quickest way to handle this. From my perspective, which, mind you, I come at magic very scientifically, very dogma-free. If you approach magic as I do, you're definitely running down the middle in the gray area where everything's about balance and neutrality. Because at the end of the day, if you trace everything back to the source of energy, whatever you might think that source may be, all energy came from that source, therefore it technically doesn't have an alignment. That out of the way. So, by that standard, everything's neutral. It's more of how you utilize it. That said, yes, a lot of people do view angels as good, or at least more positive and full of that white shiny light. And demons have the reputation for being evil, darker, or more conniving and tricksy. That is the stereotype that is placed upon both of these two. And I do call it a stereotype because working with both of them, I have not, as long as I've approached the entity with respect and haven't tried to browbeat them or anything like that, I've never had an issue out of them. Not once. And if something happened that I wasn't expecting, it was more than easy for me to speak with them and be like, wait, why did this happen? And they were totally willing to show me exactly why it happened. And 9 times out of 10, it was I didn't think that through. Now that said, again, there's times when the angels really, really, really annoyed me. The one that comes to mind most is I was dealing with nightmares that were physically causing me harm for near a year. And I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't sleep. I didn't want to sleep at that point. So I actually figured, you know what? Raphael's the divine healer. Let's go talk to him. So I got in contact with the Archangel Raphael, and his exact answer is, can't help you. That issue's already being taken care of, and nothing I can do is going to help you. He's like, and I was like, wait, you can't help me? He's like, well, technically I'm not allowed to help you with the situation as it is. I did not handle that situation well. I did not take it well. I'm still miffed at that. Because he basically said, yes, I can help, but no, I'm not going to. But that's where he's following his rules. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Back to where you said that, you have your own
morals. They don't bend them. They don't bend those rules. And believe it or not, I was like, okay, could you at least give me an idea of who to talk to? And that's when he's like, Loki. And I was like, wait, what? I don't work with Loki. What? But he did essentially point me in the right direction, so I got to give him props on that. But again, because of that rule, he wouldn't help me. And there's a lot of people that would say if you have the ability to heal someone and help them, and you refuse, that might be considered an evil act.
Okay.
So it's good and evil are kind of a perspective there. Now, a lot of people do gravitate toward angels because, again, there's a lot of spiritualists who they're all about the love and light concept, and or they don't want the dogma of black magic anywhere around them. So if they stay in the angelic framework, it's honestly considered a bit more socially acceptable.
So Travesty has another question. Now this one's a really good one. It may or may not deal with angel or demon
That's
magic.
fine.
So the question is, would necromancy be considered evil or light magic, so dark or light magic, considering it raises the dead from life? Jesus was resurrected. Is that considered necromancy, or is it considered another form of magic? And that's something he's quite curious about, something I am quite curious about myself.
I love this question.
As well, on top of that, since we have talked about the darker and lighter side of magic being, more of a chaotic style of magic versus a more, what did we say it was? Neutral? I'm like, yeah. Anyways, not necessarily good or bad magic. All magic is magic. It's just either it's chaotic or...
Yeah.
Why can't I think of the other word? I'm having such a hard...
Order or chaos?
Lawful. Lawful means...
Yeah, lawful works.
Lawful or chaotic.
Yeah.
So...
No, I love this question, Travis. This is actually a pet peeve of mine, and I don't get an option to talk about it enough. So thank you.
Let's hear it. It's kind of like me with doodles. Do it. Just go for it.
Necromancy is not evil. In fact, there are more necromancers walking around right now in the public that if you were to call them a necromancer, they would crap their pants and they would go off on you. Because necromancy doesn't mean you have to raise a skeleton, a zombie, and any of that. Necromancy is any form of magic or psychic ability that works with the dead. So, any of the mediums out there who speak with the dead, they're necromancers. Any of these oracle readers, scryers, any of these people who are communicating with the dead in any shape, form, or fashion, that is a form of necromancy, whether they're using it for good or what, it doesn't matter. In fact, necromancy itself pretty much just translates to knowledge of the dead or knowledge from the dead. It's more or less divinations that uses spirits that have passed on. So, if you were to summon a dead spirit to ask it a question, that's necromancy. Now, you can also summon spirits to do other work and whatnot, just the same way you can with any evocation rite. And those are all necromancy. Now, the reason it has such a evil connotation to it is people, if you look at it through the lens of, let's say, eternal rest and that's it, then you die, your soul goes to wherever it is to rest forever, do not disturb.
That's going to be me.
Yeah, then
do not fucking disturb me.
Any form of necromancy in their mind through this viewpoint, you're disturbing that spirit's rest. The problem with this analogy is people who embrace this concept of never disturb a spirit at rest, they also embrace the concept of ancestral spirits watching over us. Now, I don't know if anyone in here's had to chase a toddler, but can you chase that toddler and stay in your recliner drinking your beer at the same time?
Unfortunately, no.
No, you cannot. So you really can't double dip on this issue in my mind. And from my understanding of, I guess you'd say, the spiritual self, it really doesn't work that way anyway. But then that gets into a different ballpark. Because, well, without going too far off, just look at reincarnation. You got to figure in how does eternal rest and reincarnation work together. So, no, necromancy, again, it's not an evil one. It is one that can be used very, very badly and definitely in evil ways. But it comes down to how you use it, and it's practiced a lot more than people think it is because, like I said, any form of magic or psychic ability that's tapping into spirits and the dead in any way will fall under that category.
So it doesn't necessarily fall under angel or demon magic. It can just be any kind of magic can use it.
Yeah. I mean, there are angels that will help you speak with the dead. There are angels that will help you with necromancy. And there are definitely demons that'll do the same thing.
Then his other question was, in regards to the resurrection of Christ, would that be considered a form of necromancy since it was done specifically by God? Or is it its own form of magic? Or is it even considered magic?
I would put that in the category of magic. Now, again, this is where your viewpoint, your theology, and your religion kind of have to collide. Because I know a lot of Christians that say if it's by the hand of God, it's not magic. Because magic and the power of God are separated in their mind.
Okay.
But in my viewpoint, it's all the same energy, regardless, and therefore, whether you call it the power of God or magic, it's still the same thing. But that's my viewpoint. So, but for me, if somebody's being resurrected from the dead, whether it be as a zombie or full-fledged flesh and blood, yeah, I'm going to say there's some manipulation of life energy, and that's definitely got to, in some way, fall under that necromancy umbrella. I don't see how it can't. I mean, it's going to sound cheesy, but in D&D, they split necromancy and life spells. just so they could avoid the alignment conflict.
I like that. I especially love it that you brought up D&D. It makes me happy
Yeah.
because I'm getting back into it.
Actually, I think some of the resurrection spells in 5th edition are considered necromancy spells now.
Really, I'm gonna have to go and read more into it.
So,
I'm not a dungeon master, so I refuse to really learn all the rules.
yeah. So, I mean, that's one of those things where it really comes down to your perspective. And that's why when I'm working with my students, I tell them to focus a lot more on the results, because if it's working and you're getting results, at the end of the day, for a magician, that's what matters. Now, from a religious standpoint, you might have some other issues that you have to battle with religiously.
Okay. Let's see here. What else did I want to ask you about today? Because I had a lot of questions. Another thing I wanted to know about. What are strengths and weaknesses of using angel and demon magic?
Honestly, it's if you're asking which entity would have the more power, I've noticed no difference. Now, you could say that a strength and weakness is how easy it is to get them to help you. In my point of view, working with demons is far easier because they're far more willing to help, and I don't have to jump through as many hoops. But one advantage of working with angels is, not all the time, but most of the time, the journey is going to be a bit smoother when you're working with angels. Now, they'll still, don't get me wrong, angels will still throw you in the fire if they have to, because there's some lessons that can only be learned the hard way. But they're more inclined to avoid the fire when they can. Whereas demons, they're usually just going to take the shortest route. So, in general terms only, demons do tend to manifest and act quicker. Where angels, it's a little more gentle, easygoing.
Okay.
So it comes down to personal preference. I'm not a patient person.
Hey, neither am I. That's why I drink a lot of coffee.
Exactly.
Get shit done faster. So with that being said, our last few topics, we've talked about how to summon, request the help and the aid, and to partner up with different entities. Yeah, we were talking about the Fae, we've talked about familiars. Now, what if I want to work alongside with a specific angel, or I want to work with an angel of any caliber, really, or same goes with demon. What if I want to work with a very specific one, or I want to partner up with one, have them help me specifically with my magic and my journey of becoming a magic practitioner?
Well, first off, do your research and find one that its overall personality and I guess you could say what it specializes in really does suit you and something you're interested in.
Okay.
And from there, I would say the first, especially if you're new, start with meditation. If you can find a sigil for the angel or demon, use that in meditation. Focus on that while you meditate and make an energetic connection and then start talking with the entity. So you're building that relationship. If you can't find the sigil, because that's always a big one, especially for angels, use the name. You can straight out write the name on a piece of paper and just use that. You can also jumble the letters around to make your own custom sigil if you want. But you can go as easy as just writing the name out and focusing on that. But once you've made that connection and you've gotten to know the entity a little bit, then you would work up from there. But that's really all you have to do. And it's the same for almost any entity you work with. You just have to get to know it. And meditation's the easiest place to start. You do have people who once they learn evocation, they'll skip the meditation steps and just start evoking the entity. But they're still working on getting to know that entity, and building that relationship with it, and finding out if this is an entity they feel they can work with. Because honestly, it's like friends. Is this someone you actually want to spend time with?
Makes sense. So we've talked about different types of scriptures and stuff, different types of books. Like, we touched a little bit on other types of books last week, specifically the tomes and everything of that nature. I know in the Holy Bible, the Christian Bible, it specifically calls out 5 different angels. I do have a thumb, because it was cut off. So it calls out 5 specific angels by name. However, it does mention that there are thousands and thousands and thousands more angels than there are humans on Earth. Are there any books out there that call out more angels by name rather than the Holy Bible? And do you know what it is, or if there is one? And I know there is the Book of Demonology, which has been altered and changed, and I don't even know if there's actual a physical printed publication. I know that it's been handwritten many times. Are there any other scriptures or anything of that nature that would help them do their research on the different angels and demons out there?
Honestly, that's where it gets hard, because I've got a few books on my bookshelf that discuss angels, and a lot of the people who are writing these books, the opinions are all over the board. They really are. And it's weird because it almost seems we have a better catalog of demons than we do angels. That said, most of the text, to my understanding, that really documents angels is still very much in Hebrew. But in my work to try and work more with angels, I was able to find a book called 72 Angels of Magic. Damon Brand is the author of it.
Interesting that a guy named Damon authored a book on angels.
Yeah, I've read several of his books before I got that one, and I love his works, and he does a really great job of making it accessible to people, especially beginners. And all 72 of those angels are not the common name angels that most people would recognize.
Okay. Another question from Travesty. This is one that I've kind of gone back and forth on understanding. Druids, are they the same as pagans? And what they practice, is it the same type of magic?
Yes and no. Because pagan, the way pagan is defined is essentially, there's 2 definitions of pagan currently right now. One is,
they're based off of the elements, right?
One definition is an earth-based religion or belief system. That is one. The other one is any non-Christian belief.
Oh.
So if you're non-Judeo-Christian or something like that, you would fall under the pagan umbrella. And some people even actually say Jewish people are pagan because they don't believe in Christian, like Christ-style Christianity, even though they believe in God. So depending on where you draw that line on God, will put you under that pagan umbrella. Now, that said, I know a few druids. I took some druidic training for a while. It is a heavily nature-based magic. Heavily nature-based. But it's also, in many ways, simpler than even what modern Wicca might be. Even though its wisdom seems to run deeper and more complex, the actual application can oftentimes be a bit more simple.
I like simplicity.
So,
okay.
I hope that answers, because yes, technically they're pagan. Is their magic the same? Well, yes and no.
Okay. I think we touched a little bit of this already, but personalities of angels and demons. We've covered the different entities. You know, they're more of an energy based. They're more energy based than they are like a physical apparition. They have their own feelings and everything, but it's more of yes and no, black and white, rather than pettiness and jealousy and all that, and all the complex human-based emotions, because humans, we just make everything complicated. We just, but entities seem to be less so. So what kind of personalities, or are they all just kind of a mishmash of personalities based off of each?
Their personalities are very complex. In fact, I would compare them to us in a lot of ways. The only two differences would be they act on thought first. They really don't act on emotions. Even though that they appear to have these emotions, they don't experience them the same way we do, so they don't really act on them. They follow what we might consider a more logical path, or their actions are driven by logic more often than not. That said, one of the reasons that they do want to work with humans were how they can have an opportunity to interact with the physical world. So there's a lot of emotions and stuff. We experience it, even though they have knowledge of it. Without a physical body, they can't experience it the same way. So when working with us, that helps them just kind of bridge that boundary there. And it allows them to experience the physical realm. And their personalities, they're all over the place. And honestly, their personality seems to shift based on who they're talking to. Which, if you think about it, that makes sense. Because even people we know, they will approach and act differently based on who they're talking to. Because you're going to approach someone in a way you're more comfortable with and the way you connect best with them.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me. So Travis he's holding conversation here. He is absolutely like enamored with you, by the way. He's saying that he was told within his religion that pagan culture is considered taboo in the Word of God and considered demonic. Coming from a Christian background, I can definitely say when it comes to Christianity, and it doesn't matter which sect of Christianity, whether you're non-denominational, Baptist, Episcopalian, Pentecostal, Assembly of God, any of those varieties, you know, we all still fall underneath the Christian context. And based upon what the Bible says, it's Word of God or it's wrong. Yeah. So and a lot of people, and I'm actually just wrote a paper on extremism within religions and cultures. And Christianity, especially with a lot of people who have been practicing Christianity for a really long time, can be quite extremist when it comes to how they interpret the Bible. And I definitely say interpretation loosely, because the Bible itself in its current form now is still an interpretation of an interpretation of an interpretation, and so on and so forth, almost like 2,000 years ago. So even what we're reading today could actually be just a very badly interpreted version of what was originally in the stone tablets.
And you can't forget the telephone game. The Bible was put together 500 years after Jesus was crucified.
And ultimately, as I have said, and one of the reasons why I walked away from the Christian church many years ago, and it's not to say that I closed the door when I walked away. I just haven't returned yet until I figure out my own path. But one of the things that I often say is man is an incredibly flawed creature, and this was before I started really looking into spirituality. Man, doesn't matter how awesome you were, Jesus Christ, even though we say he was perfect, was still quite flawed. If you truly read the Bible, there are a lot of things that he has said that are quite flawed, especially even by today's standards. So man being the flawed creature he is, he's going to write things down and it's going to be wrong and it's going to be misinterpreted. It's going to be misunderstood. So, I could write down in a journal today, how the Trump administration was, from my eyes, right? And I could write down every single Trump tweet, and I could write down every Hillary Clinton tweet, and I could write down everything that went on today and fill up an entire journal and pass that down generations from now. And, because journals fall apart and words fade, somebody's going to rewrite my journal and they're going to try to interpret what my journal said. So they're going to rewrite it, and they're going to rewrite it based off their interpretation of it and try to make it make more sense to their time frame. So ultimately, when it comes to Christianity, though, because I'm going off on a tangent in regards to that, anything that doesn't correlate to Jesus Christ or God the Father, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Holy Trinity, if it does not relate to that, it is considered evil. Period. That is ultimately what the Bible says. So, yes, paganism, according to Christianity, is wrong. Yeah. According to the Bible, it is wrong.
But Christians are not alone in their view on that entirely. No. Because, as I've already said once in this stream, I approach magic from strictly a scientific point of view. When I do my rituals and my spells, I demand 85% or better manifestation results, and my entire practice is based just on that. It's based on results. If a ritual or a spell is not going to give me a tangible result, to me, that's useless. Now, a lot of people's like, okay, what's the big deal? I get tons and tons and tons of hate mail from magicians and pagans alike because I focus on the results, and there's a lot of process that I raise question to, and, well, let's be honest, I don't follow the religious side of it at all. Mm-hmm. And they take exception to the way I approach it. Now, I ain't got no problem with how they approach it. In fact, I've said many a times, religion can be a wonderful thing if you find one that works for you.
True.
In fact, I even recognize a category of magic that I would term faith magic. It's a form of energy and power that can only be raised with what essentially is pure or blind faith. I can't do it. My brain cannot understand blind or pure faith. I need tangible proof. So it just seems to be a product of people. I think people want to sum it up as religion, but I think actually, Linda, you may have touched on it. It's just that extremist. You dive so deeply into one paradigm that when a different paradigm challenges it, it throws you into an uncomfortable spot.
Yep. And if you even look at most religions, every single religion, like I can't even think of a single mainstream, and I say mainstream because they're talked about often. I cannot think of a single mainstream religion that is not divided into different sects. I mean, Christianity, I just named like 6 different types of Christianity. And then there's subsects of that. Like if you look at the Baptist, there's the Southern Baptist, there's the Westboro Baptist, there's just plain Baptist. Like it goes insane. And then to go back, because he's continuing on. I'm trying to keep up here. Um, First off, he is saying that you're speaking on great things and you're speaking to his heart. He's saying that he's having an, oh my God, that's what I have said kind of moment, especially when he's talked to his friends in the past. And he also asked about stealing as a sin, and it's brought up that it's a sin. But if you're stealing due to, you're hungry and because you're poor and you're hungry, and the only way for you to get food is to steal food from where it is, available, is that considered sin, or are you condemned to hell? I will say, from the way I see it, and also he goes, would that be considered a temptation to steal food because of survival, or would it be influence from a demon? Ultimately, humans are animals.
Yeah.
If you go biblical, we came from the Garden of Eden. That's where Adam, Eve, and Lilith and everybody, from the very beginning, that's where they lived. Food was readily available. As we, as humans, have evolved and gone through time and everything, the concept of money and haves and have-nots has evolved. And, you have to have money to have food. Now, as a survival trait, doing what you have to do to survive, such as stealing food, in my eyes, is not a sin. If you cannot provide yourself with food with money, and someone cannot give you money or food, then you're left with no choice. When it comes to it being a sin, God knows your heart, and that is a huge thing in the Bible, is God knows your heart. God is love, and God forgives.
In fact,
if you are doing it not out of malice but out of survival, God understands that, and he has provided you with that opportunity to fill your stomach. If you thank God for providing you with that opportunity and request forgiveness for the sin of theft, then it is a sin, but it is a forgivable sin. Now, did you kill a person in the act of stealing said food? Or did you break one of the big 10 commandments while in the process of stealing food? That is when the question of, is this an unforgivable sin? But even God himself in the Bible has said he will forgive you for anything. All you have to do is ask for him to be in your heart and ask for his forgiveness and live by him, and he will forgive you. You can still get into the kingdom of heaven.
Yep.
Okay, Drake, your interpretation. Sorry.
Actually, the quickest way to interpret it, because I actually agree with you, is watch Batman Begins. Yes! There's actually a scene in there where he says the simplicity of right and wrong fell away the first time he had to steal food so he wouldn't starve to death.
Yes. I'm so glad you brought that up. That makes me so happy.
That's one of the reasons I love that trilogy, is they actually do tap into the wisdom that the old Dark Horse comics gave to Batman. They did the League of Shadows really well. I wish they'd done more with it, but oh well. That really sums the whole thing up. There is a section. I've heard preachers. I can't swear it's in the Bible, but I know preachers like to quote it all the time, that the laws of God are higher than the laws of man. Well, you have to eat, and if you really want to get down to it, Garden of Eden, every plant on this planet was put here for us. Mm-hmm. So technically, God said you can have that apple. Well, not the one on that tree. You can have the rest of the apples, just not that one. But, and that's the thing, because if you're doing it to survive, I see nothing wrong with it. I really don't. Now, if you're stealing from someone just to be a dick, and you would rather steal it than pay for it, that's a different story, because you're doing it out of a place of spite and malice.
Yep. It's a question of, is it out of malice or is it out of necessity?
Yeah.
Like, on a normal day, if I'm walking down the street and I see somebody I don't like their face, I'm not going to punch them in the face.
Yeah.
Because I know that is wrong. Okay, that is out of malice. However, if I see a guy kicking a puppy, I'm going to run up and I'm going to punch it in the face, because there's absolutely no reason why he should be kicking a puppy.
And there's actually a lot of people, parrot heads will know this, other people won't. But there was a point in Jimmy Buffett's life where he could not feed himself.
Mm-hmm.
So, knowing he needed calories and something substantial, he stole a jar of peanut butter. Years later, he actually slipped a note and a $20 bill into the same convenience store. And I mean, we're talking like, I think it was like 20 years later, but he still did that. Because there was a point where he had nothing, and that peanut butter was the difference between life and death. And then there's the point where he did this thing, he knew he did it for a reason, but he still wanted to at least give something back.
And for those who are not in my chat right now, Travesty also said, he also brings up does God, angels, as well as Jesus can influence people? Is there good or bad here? And my response to that is good and bad is relevant. It's one's own morals and society that truly control that concept. Because what I see as an act of good or a good influence does not necessarily mean it is a good influence for someone else or from someone else's eyes. To go back to the whole extremist viewpoint, okay? We see Islamic extremists, people over there with ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Hezbollah and all of them. We, over here in America, who are not sympathizers or anything like that, we see them as terrorists. We see them as bad. They are not okay. Their thought processes, their actions, everything that we see is bad. However, those who sympathize with them, those who agree with their morals, who agree with what they are doing, they see them as good. And we're the terrorists because we are trying to stop them from spreading Islam and from doing what they feel is God's calling to them. Yep. So in that case, what God, Jesus, an angel, and what anybody spiritually is telling you to do, you have to think of, is it good for my morals based off of my own personal moral compass and the society in which I live? Or is it bad based upon my morals and the society in which I live? Because if I was, in the middle of Syria right now, holding up a Holy Bible and saying everybody's going to go to hell unless they convert to Christ, I'm going to get, number one, if I'm not in a lot more clothing, I'm going to get shot or I'm going to get stoned. But because I'm holding that Bible and I'm preaching, hey, you guys need to get your shit together and start worshiping Jesus, I'm going to get shot, okay? But if I'm doing that same thing here in America, I'm going to have a lot more support from people around me because there's a lot more Christians and there's a lot more Christian influence. Or those who don't necessarily believe in Jesus or who think I'm absolutely nuts, the likelihood of them just being like, okay, great, you're crazy lady, good job, keep up the good work. They don't see me as bad, they just see me as annoying. And Christians would be like, she is doing God's work. She is doing as she has been called upon by our Father.
Yeah. Now,
so that's kind of where you got to go with whenever it comes to what a demon's telling you, what an angel's telling you, what God's telling you, Allah, Buddha, yeah, I mean, everybody.
We simplify things way too much, too often. And after all these years of working with entities across the board, the reason I usually choose to use the word entity is because it's just that. I found that good and evil, they're strictly human terms. We are the only entities that truly view it in such a way. Everything else views it as part of universal balance. And you got the balance on the center and everything else is just one thing on the scale. And this was a hard one when I got into the occult because I've always had a very strict code of honor that I follow. But the more I got into magic, the more I started to examine myself and that simplicity. And if you do any research in the occult for any amount of time, one of the key rules that you always run into, know thyself. And that's a really hard thing, because to know yourself, not only do you have to know, well, looking at my code of honor, I had this little tenet in there, and it's like, why is it there? You have to be able to answer that question. You have to know where you stand and why you stand there. In fact, I mean, the laws of magic might make a great episode of this podcast. I did a YouTube video on them, but it was one of the longest ones I had to do. We might have to split those. We might have to do 2 episodes on those. Especially if people start asking questions, which I recommend.
Okay.
Unless we just want to do a long one. I don't mind that either.
I mean, we can do it all. I'm down. What was I thinking? What was I going to say? Number one, we're actually over time for the first time, so that's kind of cool.
That is cool.
Number 2,
Cool.
I just wanted to do a quick parting shot before we start doing our little wrap up. The one thing that I have learned from Drake, and I have doing my own research in the occult, is that when it comes to the ethics, as he was saying, there's nothing that is inherently good, and there's nothing that is inherently bad. And kind of going back to the whole thing of it all depends on your personal ethics and everything of your society and where you are in life and in location. But there are entities out there that are malicious entities, as well as there are entities out there that are inherently for the betterment of you and to try to give you as much peace as possible. But that also goes back to the extremist viewpoints. If there is hatred in your heart and hateful energy around you, then there will probably be some kind of malicious entity. If you pray, meditate, beckon for more peaceful entities to come into your life and to surround yourself with more peaceful energies, peaceful vibes, peaceful peace in general, you're going to get that. But if you're talking to those entities, and based off of what he's told me, what I have done in my own research, you get what you ask for. If you're asking for peace, you will find it. If you're asking for, chaos, you're going to get it.
Yeah. It's that law of attraction. If you're focused on it, you will get it. And I mean, most of the malicious entities, they're actually the lesser entities. In fact, I'd say 90% of them are everyone human spirits that they were bad people in life and now they're just nasty spirits. So the good news there is they're pretty easy to run off with just about any other entity.
Or you can bind them to whatever they are attracted to and then sell it to the occult museum, because everybody likes to make a little bit of money.
That works too.
Okay, so with that being said, we are at the end of our Magical Coffee Hour, and it has been an absolute blast.
It has!
Holy crap, this has probably been one of my favorite ones so far, and I mean, we've had some really fun topics, but this one is probably
this was great.
Been our most
and Travis, thank you for the questions. Those were great.
Travis D, you are exactly what we've been looking for. Go find your friends and tell them to come hang out with us on Sundays now.
Yeah, and join us next Sunday. Keep me on my toes.
Anyways, I'm going to be dropping the information down in my chat, so anybody who does come by and takes a look, you can go and hunt down Drake. He is the working dragon mystic. His name is Drake. He's kind of awesome. You should probably be following him on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Yeah, Instagram.
Yeah, I actually do
YouTube,
have an Instagram.
and Twitch. I had to rethink that one. He is on all social media platforms that I am currently on.
Yes.
So
and you
if
can
follow
also
me, you should probably be following him too.
You can also follow us. We just in the last few weeks, we launched an official website, workingdragonmystic.com. So you can also go there. You'll find our blog post, all our newer videos coming out, our spell services, our classes. All of that's going to be on. It's there at that website.
So, anyways, thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out. I'm Caffeine and Chaos, also known as La Linda. I hope you guys have had a great time. This handsome devil, or angel, whichever one you want him to be, is Drake the Working Dragon Mystics. Anything you want to put out, like your most recent video or anything you got planning coming up right now?
Actually, yeah. Our next video coming out, Friday we launched, that was the Magical Properties of Beef video.
Yummy.
We've had conflicting reviews from it, but we also show how to make a real easy Yule roast in there. And I think Monday we have a video that talks, it's all about overcoming the most common meditation hurdles.
I look forward to watching that one.
Yeah. So
because the coffee one was really good.
Yeah. That's actually still one of the most popular videos on the channel.
Coffee?
Yep, the coffee one. Only one video has outran the coffee video for views.
Was that the salt one?
Nope, it was the dragon magic video.
Boom.
Apparently people really want more dragon magic, so I'm going to have to do more videos on that.
Oh yeah, get them dragons moving. All right, boys and girls, girls and boys of all ages, thank you so much for dropping in. I'm Caffeine and Chaos, and we'll see you guys next week for a really special Yuletide episode. Woo!
Yay!
All right, until next time, bye.
Bye.